Pregnant secretary freezes when ruthless billionaire ex who demanded abortion spots her swollen belly on his way to marry her twin sister. 6 months pregnant. His voice cut through the rain like ice. After you told me you terminated it. Nadia's blood froze as Riker's eyes locked on her swollen belly. The gas station's fluorescent lights exposed what she'd desperately hidden since fleeing his empire. I never, her voice caught. Your email ordered me to abort our baby or lose everything. His face transformed from shock to something far more dangerous. What email? Have you ever discovered your entire life was destroyed by a lie? That the person you've hated might be just as much a victim as you? Like and subscribe if you're ready to uncover a betrayal so deep it could cost a mother and her unborn child everything. 30 minutes earlier, Nadia Moreno had been stuck in gridlock traffic on the rain-soaked highway, one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting protectively on her swollen belly as her unborn child kicked with surprising strength. The downpour had transformed Chicago's evening commute into a nightmare of flashing brake lights and impatient horns. She hummed softly, a melody she'd composed for the baby growing inside her. A secret lullaby for a child who wasn't supposed to exist. Just you and me, little one, she murmured, feeling another strong kick against her palm. We've made it this far. A little traffic won't stop us. 6 months pregnant and thriving, despite everything. Despite the ultimatum, despite leaving her dream job, despite rebuilding her life from scratch in a city where she'd once been considered pharmaceutical royalty, Nadia had learned that survival sometimes meant driving away from everything familiar and starting again with nothing but determination and the precious life growing inside her. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof of her modest Honda Civic, a far cry from the luxury vehicles she'd once driven. Through the blur of her windshield wipers, Nadia noticed a sleek black Bentley weaving through traffic with the entitled confidence of extreme wealth. Something about its movement triggered a memory, a phantom pain she'd spent months trying to forget. As the sports car pulled alongside her in the adjacent lane, Nadia's breath caught in her throat. She didn't need to look. She knew exactly who drove that car, knew the precise way he handled the steering wheel, knew the imperious tilt of his head as he surveyed the world that might as well have been built for him. Riker Devereaux, 37 years old, self-made billionaire, CEO of Devereaux Pharmaceuticals, one of the most formidable medical conglomerates in the country. The father of her unborn child. Against her better judgment, Nadia turned her head, a moth helplessly drawn to destructive flame. Through the rain-streaked glass, their eyes met for the first time in 6 months. She watched recognition flash across his aristocratic features, followed by confusion, and then, as his gaze dropped to her unmistakably pregnant form, pure, undiluted shock. Time seemed to freeze in that moment of mutual recognition. Then traffic began to move, and Nadia's survival instincts kicked in. She accelerated, taking the next exit with reckless speed, her heart pounding against her ribs. In her rearview mirror, she saw the Bentley cutting across 2 lanes of traffic to follow her. No, 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 she whispered, panic rising in her throat. This isn't happening. But it was. After 6 months of careful avoidance, of rebuilding her life piece by painful piece, Riker Devereaux had seen her, had seen the pregnancy he had demanded she terminate for the sake of his precious corporate empire. Her phone began to ring, the display lighting up with a name she'd never deleted but had sworn never to answer again. She ignored it, focusing instead on putting as much distance as possible between herself and the sleek black car that continued to follow her through the rain-soaked streets. She needed fuel. Her gas light had been blinking ominously for the past 10 minutes. With no other choice, she pulled into a service station, praying Riker would drive past. Instead, the Bentley swung in behind her, blocking any chance of escape. Nadia's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel as she watched through her rearview mirror. Riker emerged from his car, rain immediately drenching his impeccable suit, plastering his dark hair to his forehead. Even disheveled by the downpour, he radiated power and authority, commanding the space around him as effortlessly as he commanded his boardroom. He approached her car with long, determined strides. Nadia pressed the lock button, a futile gesture against a man who had once owned her heart so completely. Nadia. His voice was muffled through the glass but still sent shivers down her spine. Open the door. We need to talk. Get away from my car, she shouted, hoping her voice sounded stronger than she felt. He didn't move, rain cascading down his face as he stared at her with an intensity that had once made her feel like the center of his universe. Now it only reminded her of how completely he had shattered her world. 6 months pregnant. His voice cut through the rain like ice. After you told me you terminated it. Nadia's blood froze as his words penetrated the glass between them. I never, her voice caught. Your email ordered me to abort our baby or lose everything. His face transformed from shock to something far more dangerous. What email? The confusion in his voice seemed genuine, but Nadia had learned the hard way not to trust appearances, especially when they came wrapped in bespoke suits with perfect jawlines and eyes that could melt her resolve with a single glance. Don't play games with me, she said, her voice steadier now, fueled by 6 months of built-up anger. The one that called our baby an unfortunate situation that needed to be handled discreetly before the Novaxis merger. Something shifted in his expression, confusion, then dawning horror that seemed too raw, too visceral to be manufactured. I never sent that email. His face contorted with anguish as he slammed his palm against her window. I bought a ring, Nadia. I was going to ask you to be my wife, the mother of my child. Her world tilted on its axis as the baby kicked violently within her, as if responding to the voice of its father heard for the first time. The timing was too perfect, too cruel to be coincidence. Then who told me you'd destroy my career if I didn't abort? Who scheduled the appointment at that clinic? Who sent a car to collect me like I was a problem to be solved? The questions poured out of her, questions that had haunted her sleepless nights for months. Someone who wanted us both to suffer, his eyes darkened with rage. Someone who's about to pay with everything they have. The rain continued to pound around them as Nadia tried to process his words. Could it be possible? Had she spent 6 months hating a man who was as much a victim as she was? Slowly, her trembling fingers found the button to lower her window just an inch, just enough to hear him clearly over the rain. Explain, she demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. Make me understand how this happened. Riker's eyes never left hers, his expression more open, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. Not here. Please, Nadia. Somewhere dry, somewhere we can talk properly. She hesitated, every instinct screaming that letting him back into her life would be a catastrophic mistake. But the baby kicked again, a reminder of what was at stake, not just her heart this time, but their child's future. There's a diner at the next exit, she said finally. I'll meet you there. The neon sign of Mel's all-night diner flickered against the darkening sky, a relic from a simpler time when Nadia's life hadn't been complicated by billion-dollar mergers and secret pregnancies. She parked her Honda as far from the entrance as possible, giving herself time to compose her thoughts before facing Riker again. Inside, the diner was nearly empty, just a few truckers at the counter and an elderly couple by the window. Nadia slid into a booth in the far corner, positioning herself with a clear view of both entrances. The habits of prey, she thought grimly. Riker arrived moments later, the rain having done nothing to diminish his commanding presence. Heads turned as he made his way toward her, his expensive suit out of place among the worn vinyl booths and laminated menus. You came, he said simply, sliding into the seat across from her. I want answers, she replied, hands wrapped around a mug of decaf coffee she'd ordered while waiting. Start talking. Riker studied her face for a long moment, as if memorizing every detail that might have changed in 6 months. His gaze lingered on the shadows beneath her eyes, the new wariness in her expression, before dropping to her swollen belly visible above the table's edge. How far along are you? He asked, his voice softer than she remembered. 26 weeks. One hand instinctively moved to her stomach. It's a girl. Something flickered across his face, wonder, grief, regret, all tangled together. A daughter, he whispered. A daughter you wanted terminated, Nadia reminded him sharply, unwilling to be swayed by his apparent emotion. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Riker leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. I never asked for that. When you told me you were pregnant, I was shocked, yes. It wasn't planned. But after the initial surprise. He paused, seeming to struggle for words. I spent that entire day planning how to make it work. I called my jeweler. I had dinner reservations at Canlis. I was going to ask you to marry me that night. Nadia felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her. That's not possible. I got the email with the clinic appointment. The car came to pick me up. What email? What appointment? Riker's confusion appeared genuine. I called you repeatedly that night, but you never answered. By the next morning, you'd vanished. Your apartment was empty. Your phone was disconnected. No one at the lab would tell me anything beyond the fact that you'd resigned. Because I thought you wanted me to get rid of our baby, Nadia's voice rose, drawing glances from the few other patrons. She lowered it with effort. The email said you couldn't allow a personal indiscretion to threaten your precious merger, that if I didn't cooperate, you'd make sure I never worked in pharmaceutical research again. Riker's face had gone pale, his knuckles white around his coffee mug. I never sent that. I would never say those things. Our child was never a personal indiscretion to me. Then who did? Nadia demanded. Who else knew about the pregnancy? No one. He hesitated. At least, no one I told. A memory surfaced, Riker answering his phone moments after she told him about the pregnancy, his expression shifting to that focused CEO mask she knew so well. Vivian Palmer, she said slowly. Your call that morning was from her. Riker's eyes narrowed. Yes. She said there was an urgent issue with Novaxis's legal team. I had to leave immediately for an emergency meeting. Convenient timing, Nadia observed skeptically. Too convenient, Riker agreed. And when I returned to the penthouse that evening, Vivian mentioned she'd heard a rumor about you and me. She suggested that any personal entanglements could jeopardize the merger, that the Novaxis family was extremely traditional and would balk at their potential partner having a scandalous affair. So you sent me to a clinic to solve the problem, Nadia concluded bitterly. No. Riker's vehemence startled her. I told Vivian that my personal life was none of Novaxis's business and that I intended to make our relationship public. That's when I tried calling you, but you never answered. Nadia's mind raced, trying to reconcile these two contradictory narratives. Could Vivian have intercepted their communications, sent that email in Riker's name, arranged the clinic appointment? It seemed far-fetched, like something from a soap opera rather than real life. Why would your COO go to such extreme lengths, she asked. What would she gain from separating us? Control, Riker replied immediately. Vivian has been with Devereaux Pharmaceuticals since the beginning. She's always seen herself as my right hand, my most trusted advisor. When the Novaxis merger was in its early stages, she positioned herself as the essential link between our companies. And then you met me, Nadia said slowly, beginning to see the pattern. And then I met you, Riker confirmed. Suddenly, I was distracted, making decisions without consulting her first, prioritizing time with you over business meetings she considered crucial. So she decided to eliminate the distraction, Nadia whispered, one hand moving protectively over her stomach as the implications sank in. If that's what she did, Riker cautioned. We don't have proof yet. Across the table, Nadia studied his face, searching for signs of deception and finding only what appeared to be genuine anguish. Even if what you're saying is true, she said finally, it doesn't change the fact that I've spent 6 months building a new life. A life that doesn't include you. A life that includes my daughter, he countered, his gaze dropping to her belly. A daughter you didn't know existed until an hour ago, Nadia shot back. Through no choice of my own, his voice hardened slightly. Nadia, if someone manipulated us both, separated us through lies and deception, don't we owe it to ourselves, to our child, to uncover the truth? The baby kicked again, a sharp movement that made Nadia wince. Riker noticed immediately, concern replacing the intensity in his expression. Are you all right? She's just active, Nadia replied, rubbing the spot where a tiny foot or elbow had jabbed her. Especially when I'm stressed or emotional. May I? Riker hesitated, then extended his hand across the table, palm up. May I feel her? The request was so unexpected, so vulnerable, that Nadia found herself nodding before she could think better of it. She guided his hand to the spot where their daughter continued her gymnastics routine. His sharp intake of breath when he felt the movement was unmistakable. His eyes widened, a look of pure wonder transforming his features as he experienced his child's presence for the first time. That's incredible, he whispered, awe evident in every syllable. She's so strong. Like her mother, Nadia said pointedly, but without the bitterness that would have colored the words an hour earlier. Like both her parents, Riker amended gently. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, Nadia glimpsed the man she had fallen in love with, passionate, brilliant, unexpectedly tender beneath his powerful exterior. I need to think about this, she said, withdrawing her hand. It's too much to process all at once. Of course. Riker reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card, writing a number on the back before sliding it across the table. This is my personal cell. Not the one you had before, I changed it recently. Call me anytime, day or night. Nadia took the card, tucking it into her purse without looking at it. I should go. I have an early start tomorrow. You're still working? Concern furrowed his brow. Some of us don't have billion-dollar empires to fall back on, she replied, unable to keep the edge from her voice. I found a position at Biogen Research. It's small but growing. I can't afford to take time off yet. Biogen? Interest sparked in his eyes. They're doing promising work in gene therapy. Nothing compared to Project Phoenix, Nadia said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. But it's mine. I built it from nothing while carrying your child. Admiration joined the complex mix of emotions on Riker's face. That's extraordinary, Nadia. You're extraordinary. The simple compliment delivered with evident sincerity threatened to crack the protective shell she'd built around her heart. Nadia stood abruptly, gathering her purse and jacket. I need to go, she repeated more firmly this time. I'll think about what you've said. Riker rose as well, his height and presence drawing glances from around the diner. Promise me one thing, he said, his voice low and urgent. Promise you won't disappear again. Even if you decide you want nothing to do with me, at least let me know you and the baby are safe. The raw emotion in his request caught her off guard. I promise, she found herself saying. But I need time, Riker. And space to think. Whatever you need, he agreed immediately. Just don't shut me out completely. Not again. As Nadia drove home through the still falling rain, her mind replayed their conversation from every angle. Could Riker be telling the truth? Had they both been victims of a calculated deception designed to separate them at the most vulnerable moment of their relationship? Part of her, the part that had spent 6 months building walls around her broken heart, refused to believe it could be so simple. Riker was a master strategist, a man who had built a pharmaceutical empire through brilliant manipulation of market forces. What if this was just another strategy, a way to work his way back into her life now that he discovered the child she'd chosen to keep? But another part, the part that had once known the feel of his heartbeat beneath her cheek as they lay tangled in his bed, recognized the genuine pain in his eyes when she described that email, that clinic appointment. Riker Devereaux was many things, but she had never known him to be cruel for cruelty's sake. She pulled into the parking lot of her apartment building, a modest complex in a respectable but unremarkable neighborhood. Nothing like the luxury high-rise where she'd lived in Chicago. Nothing like Riker's penthouse with its panoramic views and private elevator. Inside her small two-bedroom apartment, Nadia moved directly to her second bedroom, now partially converted into a nursery. Yellow walls, a white crib still in its box, a rocking chair already assembled in the corner. Evidence of the life she was preparing to build without Riker. Her phone chimed with a text message. Unknown number, but she knew instantly who it was from. Thank you for listening tonight. Whatever you decide, know that I never stopped looking for you. Never stopped wondering what happened. Never stopped loving you. R. The words blurred as unexpected tears filled her eyes. Nadia sank into the rocking chair, one hand resting on her belly as the baby shifted restlessly within. What do you think, little one? She whispered. Is your father telling the truth? Have we both been played for fools? The sharp kick against her palm wasn't quite an answer, but it reminded her that whatever decision she made now affected not just herself, but the daughter who would enter the world in a matter of months. Nadia's phone rang suddenly, startling her from her thoughts. The name on the display brought both relief and complication, Sophia. She answered immediately. Hey, sophomore. Don't hey, soph me, her twin sister's voice came through, sharp with concern. You were supposed to call me when you got home from the conference. I've been worried sick. I'm sorry, Nadia sighed. Something happened. Something unexpected. A pause. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? We're both fine. Physically, at least. Nadia took a deep breath. I saw Riker tonight. The silence that followed was weighted with tension. When Sophia finally spoke, her voice was dangerously calm. What did that bastard want? That's just it, Nadia said. Slowly. He claims he never sent that email. Never knew about the clinic appointment. Says he was planning to propose the night I disappeared. And you believe him? Disbelief colored Sophia's tone. I don't know what to believe anymore. Nadia closed her eyes, suddenly exhausted. He seemed genuinely shocked to see me pregnant. Said his COO, Vivian Palmer, might have orchestrated everything to keep me from distracting him during the Novaxis merger. That's convenient, Sophia scoffed. Blame the assistant when you get caught being a heartless prick. Chief Operating Officer, not assistant, Nadia corrected automatically. And you didn't see his face, sophomore. He looked devastated. He's the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, Nadia. I'm pretty sure looking devastated is something they teach in Business Manipulation 101. The protective fury in Sophia's voice was so familiar, so comforting, that Nadia almost smiled despite everything. Identical in appearance but opposite in temperament, the Moreno twins had always balanced each other perfectly. Where Nadia was methodical and science-focused, Sophia was intuitive and financially savvy. Where Nadia sought to heal through medicine, Sophia sought to build through investment. Where Nadia gave people the benefit of the doubt, Sophia assumed the worst until proven otherwise. Maybe you're right, Nadia conceded. But what if you're not? What if Riker really is as much a victim in this as I am? Sophia's sigh carried through the phone. You're considering letting him back in, aren't you? I'm considering finding out the truth, Nadia clarified. For myself, and for my daughter. Our niece deserves better than a father who might discard her when she becomes inconvenient, Sophia said bluntly. That's the thing, what if he never saw her that way? Nadia's voice caught. You should have seen his face when he felt her kick, Sophia. It was like watching someone see color for the first time. Men like Riker Devereaux don't change, Nadia. No one at Devereaux can know what we're investigating, especially not Vivian. Understood, sir. I'll call you as soon as I have something. After ending the call, Riker moved to the window, staring out at the rain-slick streets below. Somewhere in this city was the woman he had spent 6 months searching for, carrying the child he had never stopped wanting. If Vivian had indeed orchestrated their separation, had robbed him of these precious months of Nadia's pregnancy, had nearly caused his daughter to be erased from existence. Riker's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Vivian Palmer had been more than his COO. She had been a mentor, a friend, one of the few people Riker trusted implicitly in the cutthroat world of pharmaceutical development. If that trust had been betrayed in the most personal way possible, the consequences would be severe and far-reaching. But first, he needed proof. And once he had it, he would ensure that nothing and no one ever threatened his family again. Family. The word echoed in his mind, simultaneously foreign and deeply resonant. For a man who had spent his life building an empire rather than personal connections, the fierce protectiveness he felt toward Nadia and their unborn daughter was both unfamiliar and all-consuming. He'd lost them once through deception. He would not lose them again. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the previous night's storm having washed the city clean. Nadia arrived at Biogen's modest research facility earlier than usual, hoping to lose herself in work before her colleagues arrived with their cheerful morning greetings and innocent questions about her weekend plans. Maya Jenkins, her research assistant and the only person at Biogen who knew the full story of Nadia's past, was already at her station, reviewing data from their latest trials. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Maya observed, studying Nadia with the frank concern of someone who had become more friend than employee over the past months. At 28, Maya was younger than Nadia, but possessed a wisdom and perceptiveness that belied her age. Something like that. Nadia hung her coat on the rack, unwilling to delve into the real reason for her exhausted appearance. "Is the Henderson data ready for review?" "On your desk, along with the protein samples you requested." Maya followed Nadia into her office, closing the door behind them. "Okay, spill. Something's wrong, and it's not just pregnancy insomnia." Nadia sank into her chair, suddenly too exhausted to maintain the pretense. "I ran into Riker yesterday." "Riker as in Billionaire baby daddy Riker?" Maya's eyes widened. "Riker in Milwaukee. What was he doing here?" "Business trip, apparently." Nadia rubbed her temples, feeling the beginning of a tension headache. "We ended up at the same gas station during the storm. He saw me, Maya. Saw that I'm still pregnant." "Oh my God." Maya dropped into the chair across from Nadia's desk. "What happened? Do we need to move to Canada? I've always wanted to live in Toronto anyway." Despite everything, Nadia smiled at her assistant's immediate leap to drastic action. "No, we don't need to flee the country. But things are more complicated than I thought." "Complicated how?" "He claims he never told me to terminate the pregnancy. Says he was planning to propose the night I disappeared." Nadia hesitated, still struggling to believe it herself. "He thinks his COO intercepted our communications, sent that email in his name, arranged the clinic appointment. All to separate us because our relationship threatened some massive merger." Maya whistled low. "That's either the most elaborate lie I've ever heard or one hell of a corporate conspiracy." "Exactly." Nadia reached for the herbal tea Maya had prepared for her, finding comfort in its familiar warmth. "And I don't know which is worse, that the man I loved could have been so cruel, or that someone could have successfully manipulated both of us at our most vulnerable moment." "What are you going to do?" "Let him investigate, for starters. But conduct my own investigation too." Nadia met her assistant's concerned gaze directly. "Which is where you come in." "Me? What can I do?" "You were an IT specialist before you decided to change careers, right? Worked for that tech startup in Chicago. Quantum Systems." "Yeah." Maya confirmed. 3 years of database management and security protocols before I realized I was dying inside and needed to work on something that actually helped people. "So, you know how to track digital footprints, find the origin of emails, that sort of thing." Understanding dawned on Maya's face. "You want me to trace the email that supposedly came from Riker?" "If you can," Nadia confirmed. "I still have it. Never could bring myself to delete it. Like keeping evidence of a crime. I'll need the full header information, not just the body text, Maya said, professional interest clearly piqued. And it might take time. Whoever did this, if someone did this, probably covered their tracks. I understand. But Maya. Nadia leaned forward, her expression grave. This stays between us. If Vivian Palmer really did orchestrate all this, she's not someone to be taken lightly. She's Riker's right hand, with all the power and resources that implies. Corporate espionage and manipulation sounds like the plot of a bad thriller novel, Maya's expression sobered. But I get it. Confidential mission, top secret clearance only. Thank you. The relief of having an ally in this bizarre situation was overwhelming. I know this is beyond your normal job description. Are you kidding? This is way more interesting than cataloging protein samples. Besides, Maya's tone grew serious. I was there when you first arrived, remember? I saw what this did to you. If someone deliberately caused that pain, they deserve whatever's coming to them. Before Nadia could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message from the number Riker had given her the night before. Looking into Vivian's activities from March. Need the exact time you received the email about the clinic. Also, any other communications you received supposedly from me during that period. No pleasantries, no emotional appeals, just direct, action-oriented text focused on gathering evidence. It was so characteristically Riker that Nadia almost smiled despite herself. When faced with a problem, he never wallowed in emotion or uncertainty. He simply devised a strategy and executed it with precision. She showed the message to Maya, who raised an eyebrow. At least he's not wasting time. You going to answer? Yes, Nadia decided. If he's investigating from his end while we investigate from ours, we're more likely to uncover the truth. She typed a brief response. Email arrived 5:47 p.m. on March 15th. No other communications after that. I called repeatedly but couldn't reach you. His reply came almost instantly. My calendar shows a dinner meeting with Novaxis representatives that night, 6 to 9 p.m. I have no recollection of scheduling it. Checking security footage from the building to confirm my whereabouts. Nadia stared at the message, her heart beginning to race. If Riker could prove he was somewhere else when that email was sent in his name, it would be the first tangible evidence supporting his version of events. The Henderson meeting is in 20 minutes, Maya reminded her gently. Want me to reschedule? No. Nadia shook her head, pulling herself back to the present. Life goes on, mysterious email or not. I have work to do and a baby to support. But as she gathered her materials for the client meeting, Nadia couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully reconstructed life was about to be upended once again, this time, perhaps, by the truth rather than by lies. Riker Devereaux had built his reputation on rational decision-making and emotional control. In boardrooms across the country, he was known for his unflappable demeanor, his ability to negotiate multi-billion-dollar deals without revealing a hint of his true thoughts or feelings. Yet, as he sat in Julian Harris's office watching security footage from March 15th, he found himself struggling to maintain that legendary composure. On the screen before him, Vivian Palmer, his COO, his right hand for nearly a decade, was clearly visible entering Riker's private office at 5:30 p.m., remaining there alone for approximately 20 minutes before exiting with a satisfied expression. The timing matches, Julian observed quietly. The email to Ms. Moreno was sent at 5:47 p.m., according to her information. And where was I during this period? Riker's voice was dangerously calm. Based on key card logs and garage security footage, you left the building at 5:15 p.m., presumably headed home to meet Ms. Moreno as planned. Julian hesitated. But at 5:40 p.m., you received a call that appears to have diverted you to the Novaxis Club instead. The Novaxis dinner meeting. Riker's jaw tightened. A meeting I have no memory of scheduling, that doesn't appear in my personal calendar, only in the shared corporate calendar that Vivian has access to. Yes, sir. Julian, a former military intelligence officer who now headed Devereaux Pharmaceutical Security Division, remained professional despite the increasingly disturbing implications of their investigation. We've also retrieved email logs from the server backup. There's evidence of correspondence being deleted from your account during that same time window. Can you recover the deleted emails? Some of them. Our technical team is working on it now. Julian handed Riker a thin file. What we've managed to recover so far includes draft emails to Ms. Moreno that were never sent. They appear to have been written by you earlier that day. Riker opened the file, his expression hardening as he read the recovered email fragments. There, in black and white, was evidence of what he'd actually been thinking that day, not anger or disappointment about the pregnancy, but plans for their future together. Logistics of how they would make it work. Even notes about potential wedding venues. She erased all of this, Riker said softly, the controlled fury in his voice making Julian straighten instinctively. She erased our future. There's more, sir. Julian's tone suggested he was saving the worst for last. We've discovered communications between Ms. Palmer and the Novaxis group that weren't included in the official negotiation records. Private exchanges suggesting that she was positioning herself to lead the merged company's North American operations, a position that would effectively make her your equal rather than your subordinate. So that was her endgame. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Eliminate Nadia as a distraction. Secure her position with Novaxis through back channels. Present herself as the steady, rational counterbalance to my supposedly volatile personal life. It appears so, sir. Riker closed the file, his decision made. I want complete documentation of everything we've found, every email, every security log, every frame of footage. And I want Vivian's access to all Devereaux systems revoked immediately. Sir. Julian looked startled for the first time. That's going to raise immediate red flags. Ms. Palmer will know something's happening. Good. Riker stood, straightening his suit jacket with deliberate precision. Let her know. Let her wonder. Let her feel a fraction of the uncertainty and fear that Nadia has lived with for 6 months because of her actions. What about the Novaxis merger? It's in the final stages of approval. The merger will proceed. Riker's expression was implacable, but with significant changes to the leadership structure. Vivian Palmer will not be part of Devereaux Pharmaceuticals' future in any capacity. As Riker strode from the office, phone already in hand to call his legal team, he felt a cold clarity unlike anything he'd experienced in his business career. This wasn't about corporate strategy or market position. This was about justice for Nadia, for their unborn daughter, for the 6 months of their lives that had been stolen by a woman's ruthless ambition. But first, he needed to share what he discovered with the person who mattered most. At Biogen Research, Nadia was concluding her meeting with the Henderson team, potential clients interested in developing a new gene therapy protocol. The presentation had gone well despite her distraction, and they had tentatively agreed to move forward with initial trials. As she showed them out, thanking them for their time, Nadia noticed a sleek black car parked across the street from her office. Not Riker's Bentley, but a similarly expensive vehicle with tinted windows that screamed corporate executive. Her instincts immediately went on alert. Maya, she called as she closed the front door. Did you see that black Mercedes across the street? Yeah, it pulled up about 20 minutes ago. Maya appeared from the lab, tablet in hand. I was just coming to find you. I've got something on that email. What is it? It definitely didn't come from Riker's personal email account despite appearing that way in your inbox. The header information shows it was sent through a redirecting service that masks the original sender. Can you trace it back to the source? Not directly, but I found something else interesting. Maya opened her tablet, pointing to a string of code. This particular redirecting service is favored by a company called NetShield Security, which provides digital privacy solutions to corporate clients. Let me guess, Nadia said, a chill running down her spine. Devereaux Pharmaceuticals is one of their clients. Bingo. And according to their publicly available client list, they specifically provide services to Devereaux's legal and executive divisions. Divisions that Vivian would have access to, Nadia concluded, the evidence mounting in support of Riker's theory. Before she could process this new information, her phone rang, Riker's number flashing on the screen. I have proof, he said without preamble when she answered. Security footage of Vivian in my office when the email was sent. Evidence of deleted correspondence. Private communications with Novaxis that I was never meant to see. Maya found something too, Nadia replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The email was sent through a redirecting service used by Devereaux's executive division. It was her. All of it. The cold fury in Riker's voice was palpable even through the phone. She orchestrated everything. Nadia, she tried to erase our child from existence for the sake of her own ambition. The baby kicked sharply as if responding to her father's anger. Nadia placed a protective hand over her belly, struggling to process the confirmation of what she had begun to suspect. There's a black Mercedes parked outside my office, she said suddenly. It's been there for at least 20 minutes. What? Riker's tone shifted from anger to alarm. Nadia, listen to me. Vivian's access to Devereaux systems was just revoked. If she's realized what's happening, if she suspects you're involved. You think she'd come after me? The idea seemed absurd, like something from a thriller rather than real life. We're talking about corporate manipulation, not physical danger. We're talking about a woman who was willing to manipulate you into terminating our child to advance her career, Riker countered grimly. I'm not willing to underestimate what she might do when cornered. Where exactly are you? At my office, the small research park off Highway 41. Lock the doors. I'm 15 minutes away. The sound of movement came through the phone, Riker clearly already in motion. And Nadia, if anyone approaches the building that you don't recognize, call the police immediately. The line went dead before she could argue that he was overreacting. She turned to find Maya watching her with wide eyes. So, I'm guessing Riker found evidence supporting the evil COO theory. Yes. And now he thinks Vivian might be outside in that Mercedes. Nadia moved away from the window, unconsciously placing herself further from potential sightlines. He's on his way here. Should we call the police? Maya asked, her casual tone belied by the tension in her posture. Not yet. It could be nothing. A potential client scoping out our facility. A lost driver checking directions. Even as she said it, Nadia didn't believe it. The timing was too coincidental, the presence too ominous. I'll lock the back door, Maya decided, moving toward the rear of the converted office building, and maybe move our client files off the front desk just in case. She was interrupted by a sharp knock at the front door. Both women froze, exchanging alarmed glances. Dr. Moreno? A female voice called from outside. I'm Vivian Palmer from Devereaux Pharmaceuticals. I was hoping we could speak briefly about a potential collaboration. Nadia felt her blood run cold as Vivian Palmer's voice penetrated the door. Her hand instinctively moved to protect her belly, her unborn daughter shifting restlessly as if sensing her mother's sudden fear. Don't answer it, Maya whispered, already backing toward the office phone. I'll call the police. But Nadia found herself moving forward instead, a surge of anger replacing her initial fear. This woman, this stranger she'd never actually met, had nearly destroyed her life, had attempted to erase her child from existence. The least she deserved was to face Nadia directly. Dr. Moreno? Vivian called again, knocking more insistently. I know you're in there. This is a matter of some urgency. Stay back, Nadia instructed Maya, approaching the door but keeping it firmly closed. What do you want, Ms. Palmer? There was a pause, as if her direct acknowledgement had surprised the woman. I'd prefer to discuss this matter privately. It concerns Riker Devereaux and your previous relationship. Anything you have to say can be said through the door, Nadia replied, her voice steadier than she expected. Or you can leave a card, and I'll contact you when it's convenient. I'm afraid this can't wait. Vivian's tone hardened slightly. Certain information has come to light that could be damaging to both you and Riker if not addressed immediately. Are you threatening me? Nadia asked incredulously. Not at all. I'm offering a solution that benefits everyone involved. Vivian's voice took on a reasonable, almost soothing quality that Nadia found more disturbing than outright aggression. Please, 5 minutes of your time could save months of unpleasantness. Nadia glanced at Maya, who was already on the phone with emergency services, speaking in a hushed but urgent tone. Help would be coming, but not immediately. She needed to keep Vivian talking, prevent her from becoming more aggressive or attempting to force entry. What kind of solution? She asked, playing for time. A generous financial arrangement in exchange for your discretion and relocation. The words were delivered with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to solving problems with money. A fresh start somewhere with better opportunities for someone in your condition. The clinical reference to her pregnancy, her condition, sent a wave of revulsion through Nadia. This was the woman who had orchestrated her separation from Riker, who had sent her to that clinic with the expectation that she would emerge no longer pregnant, no longer an inconvenience to her corporate ambitions. Before she could formulate a response that wouldn't consist entirely of profanity, she heard the distinctive sound of tires screeching to a halt outside. Through the side window, she saw Riker's Bentley pulling up behind Vivian's Mercedes, Riker himself emerging from the driver's side with an expression she had never seen on his face before, pure, undiluted rage. Palmer. Riker's voice carried clearly across the small parking lot. Step away from that door. Vivian turned, momentary surprise flashing across her features before her composed mask slipped back into place. Riker. I was just introducing myself to Dr. Moreno. I thought perhaps a personal approach might help resolve this situation. The only situation that needs resolving is your immediate resignation and the non-disclosure agreement my lawyers are drafting. Riker advanced up the walkway with measured steps, his fury contained but palpable. Before I have you arrested for corporate espionage, identity theft, and harassment. Nadia opened the door a crack, unable to resist witnessing this confrontation directly. Vivian Palmer was not what she had expected, not a hulking villain, but a trim, immaculately dressed woman in her early 50s with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses that gave her an academic appearance. She looked more like a university professor than a corporate manipulator. You're overreacting, Riker, Vivian said, maintaining her calm facade despite the dangerous glint in Riker's eyes. I was simply trying to contain a potentially damaging situation before it impacts the merger. By threatening the mother of my child? By showing up uninvited at her workplace? Riker stopped just short of Vivian, using his slight height advantage to full effect. The same way you contained the situation 6 months ago by impersonating me, by scheduling a termination appointment without my knowledge or consent. Vivian's expression flickered briefly before settling into calculated regret. I made certain decisions in the best interest of the company. Entirely self-serving, Riker cut in, his voice razor-sharp. The private communications with Novaxis, the position you were negotiating for yourself. This was never about protecting Devereaux Pharmaceuticals. It was about advancing your own ambitions at my expense. At Nadia's expense. At my daughter's expense. The word daughter seemed to catch Vivian off guard. Her gaze shifted to Nadia, still partially shielded by the door, her eyes dropping to Nadia's pregnant belly with a mixture of surprise and calculation. A daughter, she repeated softly. How unexpected. Something in her tone, the clinical assessment, the complete lack of human empathy, sent a chill down Nadia's spine. She instinctively stepped back, one hand protectively covering her stomach. Stay away from her, Riker warned, moving to place himself between Vivian and the door. You've done enough damage. Have I? Vivian's composure was remarkable given the circumstances. Or have I simply delayed the inevitable? You were never suited for fatherhood, Riker. Your own childhood made that abundantly clear. I merely spared you the mistake of trying to build a family when your true purpose has always been building an empire. The word struck with precision, finding vulnerabilities Nadia hadn't known existed. She watched Riker's shoulders tense, a flicker of something like pain crossing his features before being swallowed by renewed anger. You don't know the first thing about what I'm suited for, Riker replied, his voice dangerously soft. And you certainly don't get to decide the direction of my life or who I share it with. I've dedicated 10 years to Devereaux Pharmaceuticals, Vivian countered, a hint of genuine emotion finally breaking through her polished veneer. 10 years of guiding you, advising you, protecting you from distractions and poor decisions. Everything I did was to ensure the company's success. Your success. You betrayed my trust in the most personal way possible. Riker's expression was unyielding. Whatever your justifications, whatever your delusions about acting in my best interest, the result is the same. You're finished at Devereaux. The board has already been notified of your immediate termination. For the first time, Vivian's composure truly faltered. You can't do that. Not with the merger in its final stages. Novaxis won't proceed without me as the liaison. Novaxis has already been informed of the change in leadership structure. Julian Harris will be taking over your responsibilities effective immediately. Julian? You're head of security. Vivian's laugh was brittle with disbelief. He knows nothing about international business negotiations or corporate strategy. He knows about loyalty and integrity, Riker replied coldly. Two qualities you conspicuously lack. The wail of approaching sirens cut through the tension. Maya had succeeded in summoning the police, their arrival imminent. Vivian glanced toward the street, calculation clear in her expression as she weighed her options. This isn't over, Riker, she said finally, straightening her already impeccable suit. The board won't stand for this disruption so close to finalizing the biggest deal in the company's history. When they hear my side. They already have. Riker's smile was devoid of warmth, along with copies of every email you falsified, every meeting you fabricated, and every communication you had with Novaxis behind my back. Your security clearance has been revoked. Your office is being packed up as we speak, and there's a team of lawyers preparing to ensure you never work in this industry again. A police cruiser pulled up to the curb, two officers emerging with the cautious alertness their training demanded. Vivian's expression hardened into something cold and calculating. You're making a grave mistake, she said quietly. That child will destroy everything you've built, just as I warned. Family is a weakness you can't afford. You'll realize that eventually. She turned away, presenting a picture of calm cooperation as the officers approached. Good afternoon, officers, she greeted them smoothly. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. I was just leaving. Nadia watched as Vivian smoothly explained away the situation, portraying herself as a corporate representative making a business call that had become unnecessarily heated. Her performance was flawless, reasonable, slightly apologetic, completely believable. The officers, finding no immediate cause for arrest when neither Riker nor Nadia pressed charges, simply ensured that Vivian left the premises with a warning not to return. As her Mercedes pulled away from the curb, Nadia finally stepped fully onto the small porch of the research facility, her legs suddenly unsteady beneath her. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation was ebbing, leaving her lightheaded and trembling. Nadia. Riker was at her side immediately, concern replacing anger in his expression. Are you all right? Did she threaten you before I arrived? Not explicitly. She leaned against the doorframe, breathing deeply to steady herself. She offered money for my discretion and relocation. As if I could be bought off. Riker's jaw tightened. That's Vivian. Always believing every problem has a price tag. His eyes softened as they met hers. Are you sure you're okay? You're pale. Before Nadia could answer, a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen, intense enough to make her gasp and clutch at her belly. Riker's arms were around her instantly, supporting her weight as her knees threatened to buckle. "Nadia, what is it? What's wrong?" The alarm in his voice matched the panic rising in her own chest. "I don't know," she managed through gritted teeth as the pain subsided momentarily. "Just a cramp, maybe. Stress-related." But even as she said it, she knew this was different from the Braxton Hicks contractions she'd experienced occasionally over the past few weeks. This pain had a focused intensity that sent alarm bells ringing through her mind. "We need to get you to a hospital," Riker said firmly, already guiding her toward his car. "Maya, can you lock up here?" Maya appeared in the doorway, her face etched with concern. "Of course. Should I follow you there?" "Yes, please," Nadia replied, another wave of pain washing over her. "And bring my emergency bag from the office closet. Just in case." "In case?" Riker's expression sharpened with fear. "Nadia, you're only 26 weeks. It's too early." "I know," she whispered, leaning heavily against him as they made their way to the car. "But babies don't always follow schedules." The drive to Milwaukee Memorial Hospital passed in a blur of pain and fear. Riker broke every speed limit, his normally smooth driving style replaced by urgent efficiency as he navigated through traffic with one hand on the wheel and the other clasping Nadia's tightly. "It's going to be all right," he repeated, as much to himself as to her. "Both of you are going to be fine." Nadia wanted to believe him, but the increasing frequency of the pain suggested otherwise. By the time they reached the emergency entrance, she was experiencing contractions every 4 minutes, her body betraying her with a process that shouldn't have begun for another 14 weeks. Everything happened quickly after that. Nurses with a wheelchair, the rapid triage assessment, monitors strapped to her belly to track the baby's heartbeat and her contractions. The diagnosis came swiftly and with grave concern from the attending obstetrician. Preterm labor, Dr. Lawson announced after examining Nadia, likely triggered by stress and elevated blood pressure. "We're going to start you on medications to try to stop the contractions and steroids to help the baby's lungs develop more quickly, just in case we can't delay delivery." "In case?" Riker echoed, his face pale with fear. "What are her chances, their chances? If the baby comes now?" "At 26 weeks, survival rates are around 80 to 90%, Dr. Lawson replied with cautious optimism. "But there are significant risks of complications, particularly with lung development and cognitive function. Every day we can keep this baby inside is critical." Nadia closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing as another contraction gripped her. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Their daughter wasn't supposed to enter the world under these circumstances, premature, at risk, with parents who barely understood their relationship to each other anymore. "This is my fault," Riker said quietly when the doctor had left to order the medications. "If I hadn't confronted Vivian at your office." "Don't," Nadia interrupted, gripping his hand tightly. "This isn't your fault. If anything, it's Vivian's. Or maybe it's just bad luck. Bad timing." She attempted a weak smile. "Our specialties, apparently." Riker brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss against her knuckles. The tender gesture, so at odds with the controlled businessmen she'd witnessed confronting Vivian, brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I know." He met her gaze directly, no pretense or facade between them for perhaps the first time since their reunion. "I'm terrified. But I'm also here, Nadia. I'm not going anywhere. Not this time." The next 48 hours became a tense vigil as medications flowed into Nadia's veins, fighting to relax her uterus and halt the premature labor. Riker remained constantly at her side, sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair, fielding urgent business calls in the hallway, returning always to the same position, seated beside her bed, one hand resting lightly on her belly, connected to their daughter. Maya arrived with Nadia's emergency bag and took charge of practical matters, contacting clients to reschedule meetings, bringing changes of clothes for Nadia, even arranging for Riker's assistant to courier essential documents to the hospital so he could continue managing the most critical aspects of Devereaux Pharmaceuticals remotely. On the third morning, Dr. Lawson delivered cautiously good news. The contractions have stopped for now, and your cervix hasn't dilated further. We'd like to keep you here for observation for at least another week, possibly longer, depending on how things progress. A week? Nadia looked around the sterile hospital room with dismay. What about my work? My clients? Your work will survive, Riker said firmly. Your health and our daughter's well-being come first. Our daughter. The simple phrase sent a complicated wave of emotions through Nadia. Despite everything they'd learned about Vivian's manipulation, despite the evidence that Riker had never wanted to terminate the pregnancy, she still struggled to shift her perception of him from adversary back to partner. I can handle the client meetings, Maya offered from her position by the window. Most of them know me already, and anything I can't answer, I can relay to you for guidance. And I can arrange for better accommodations, Riker added, eyeing the standard hospital room with the critical assessment of someone accustomed to luxury. A private suite, better food, whatever would make this more bearable. What would make this more bearable, Nadia replied with a hint of her usual spirit, is not being here at all. But since that's not an option, she sighed, resigned to her temporary confinement, a more comfortable chair for you might be nice. You look like you've aged 10 years sleeping in that torture device. Riker's surprised laugh was genuine, a flash of the connection they'd once shared breaking through the tension. Consider it done. Anything else? My laptop. Project files. If I'm stuck here, I might as well work. Limited work, Dr. Lawson corrected firmly. Your blood pressure is still elevated. Stress reduction is essential if we want to keep this baby cooking longer. After the doctor left, Riker moved to sit on the edge of Nadia's bed, careful not to disturb the monitoring equipment attached to her belly. We need to talk about what happens next, he said quietly. Not just the hospital stay, but everything. Nadia met his gaze steadily. I suppose we do. I want to be part of our daughter's life, Nadia. Not just financially, not just on weekends or holidays, but fully present, involved in every decision, every milestone. His expression was earnest, determined. And I want to be part of your life too, in whatever capacity you'll allow. Riker, please. Let me finish, he took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for what came next. I never stopped loving you. Even when I thought you'd left by choice, even when I couldn't understand why, I never stopped. Finding you again, discovering what really happened, it's like being given a second chance I never thought possible. The raw honesty in his voice caught Nadia off guard. This wasn't a polished, controlled Riker Devereaux who commanded boardrooms and built business empires. This was the man she'd glimpsed in rare private moments during their relationship, vulnerable, sincere, capable of depths of feeling he rarely revealed to the world. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, he continued when she remained silent. I don't expect us to pick up where we left off as if these 6 months never happened. But I'm asking for a chance, Nadia. A chance to prove that what we had was real, and that it can be real again. The baby kicked then, a strong movement against Nadia's ribs that made her wince slightly. Riker's hand moved instinctively to the spot, his eyes widening as he felt his daughter's forceful assertion of her presence. She has opinions, Nadia said with a small smile, placing her hand over his. Apparently strong ones, like her mother, Riker observed, his thumb gently stroking the taut skin of her belly. The simple touch, the shared moment of connection to their child, broke something open inside Nadia, a dam of emotion she'd been holding back since the moment she'd recognized Riker's car on the rain-soaked highway. I was so angry with you, she whispered, tears filling her eyes. For months, I hated you for what I thought you'd done. For choosing your company over our child, for making me feel like I was nothing more than an inconvenient problem to be solved. Nadia, no. Please, let me finish now. She blinked back tears, needing to articulate the journey she'd been through. I left Chicago believing you had discarded me, discarded our baby without a second thought. I rebuilt my life from nothing, determined to prove that we didn't need you, that I could provide everything our daughter needed on my own. Riker's expression was pained, but he remained silent, giving her the space to continue. And I did it, Nadia said, a hint of pride breaking through the emotion. I found a new position, found an apartment, created a home for us. I prepared to be a single mother because I thought that was the only option. You're remarkable, Riker said softly. I've always known that, but seeing what you've accomplished these past 6 months, how you fought for our daughter, it only makes me love you more. The word love hung in the air between them, both familiar and foreign after all they'd been through. Nadia studied his face, searching for any hint of calculation or manipulation, the traits Vivian had claimed were Riker's true nature. She found only sincerity, hope, and a vulnerability that the public Riker Devereaux would never allow the world to see. I don't know if I can trust this, she admitted finally. Not because I don't believe you about Vivian's manipulation, I do. But because so much has changed. I've changed. And I need to be sure that what you want isn't just the idea of us, the perfect family you imagined 6 months ago. What I want is you, Nadia. You exactly as you are now, independent, fierce, determined. His gaze was steady, unflinching. I don't want to control you or diminish what you've built. I want to be worthy of a place in your life, in our daughter's life. The monitor attached to Nadia's belly beeped a warning, her heart rate elevating with the emotional intensity of the conversation. She took a deep breath, conscious of Dr. Lawson's warning about stress. We don't have to decide everything right now, Riker said, noticing the machine's alert. We have time. If the baby cooperates, Nadia agreed with a weak smile. She will, he spoke with such certainty that Nadia almost believed him. She's a fighter like her mother. And she's going to need both of us at our best when she arrives, whenever that might be. The conversation was interrupted by a nurse arriving to check Nadia's vitals and adjust her medications. By unspoken agreement, they shifted to less emotionally charged topics for the remainder of the day, practical arrangements for Nadia's extended hospital stay, updates on the status of Vivian's termination, Maya's plans for managing the research project in Nadia's absence. But that night, as hospital sounds diminished and darkness settled over the room, Nadia found herself watching Riker dozing in his newly acquired, more comfortable recliner. In sleep, the lines of tension left his face, making him look younger, more like the man she had fallen in love with before corporate politics and Vivian's manipulations had torn them apart. I never stopped loving you either, she whispered to his sleeping form, the confession easier in the darkness without his intense gaze upon her. I just don't know if love is enough. Whether it was enough remained to be seen. But as Nadia drifted into sleep herself, one hand resting protectively on her belly, she allowed herself to imagine a future where the three of them, herself, Riker, and their daughter, found a way forward together, stronger for having survived the crucible of deceit that had nearly destroyed them. Would you give someone a second chance if you discovered they had been manipulated just as cruelly as you had? Could you rebuild trust after such a profound betrayal? Or would the scars be too deep to ever fully heal? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're captivated by this story of deception and redemption, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that will keep you guessing until the very end. The uneasy peace of Nadia's hospitalization was shattered 4 days later when Julian Harris arrived, his normally composed expression replaced by barely contained urgency. Riker was on a conference call in the hallway, managing the ongoing fallout from Vivian's termination, when Julian requested a private conversation. Nadia watched through the glass wall of her hospital room as Julian spoke in low, intense tones, Riker's posture stiffening with each passing moment. Whatever news the security chief had brought, it wasn't good. When Riker returned to the room, his face was set in grim lines that reminded Nadia of their first encounter after 6 months apart. Controlled fury barely contained beneath a veneer of professional calm. "What's happened?" she asked, immediately alert to the change in his demeanor. Riker hesitated, glancing at the monitors tracking her vital signs. It's nothing you need to worry about right now. Just some corporate maneuvering that requires attention. Don't do that, Nadia said sharply. Don't shield me like I'm some delicate flower who can't handle difficult information. Whatever Julian told you has clearly upset you, and if it affects you, it potentially affects me and our daughter too. The flash of surprise in Riker's eyes suggested he wasn't accustomed to being challenged so directly. But instead of bristling, he seemed to appreciate her frankness, his expression softening slightly. You're right. I apologize. He sat on the edge of the bed, taking her hand in his. Vivian has gone to the board with allegations that I'm mentally unstable, making irrational decisions based on personal entanglements that threaten the company's future. What? Nadia couldn't hide her shock. That's absurd. You're the most rational person I've ever met. A small smile touched Riker's lips at her automatic defense. Thank you for the vote of confidence. Unfortunately, Vivian has spent years cultivating relationships with certain board members. She's presenting my discovery of your pregnancy and my subsequent actions as evidence of emotional instability. What actions, specifically? Firing her without board approval. Restructuring the Novaxis merger leadership without consultation. Spending the past week at the hospital instead of headquarters during a critical business period. Riker's jaw tightened. She's calling for an emergency vote to have me temporarily removed as CEO pending a psychological evaluation. Nadia felt a chill run through her at the calculated vindictiveness of Vivian's strategy. She can't possibly succeed. You founded the company. You own the majority of shares. 52%, Riker confirmed, which ordinarily would make this kind of move impossible. But there's a clause in our corporate bylaws, one Vivian herself helped draft years ago, that allows for temporary leadership changes if the CEO is deemed medically unfit to serve, regardless of ownership stake. And being at your child's mother's hospital bedside somehow makes you medically unfit? Nadia couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. According to Vivian's narrative, it's not my presence here that's the issue. It's the pattern of erratic behavior since discovering your pregnancy. Riker's expression darkened. She's painting me as a man having a breakdown, making emotional decisions that jeopardize the company's stability right before the most significant merger in our history. That's ridiculous, Nadia insisted. Anyone? The kiss came without warning, Riker leaning forward to press his lips against hers in a gentle but fervent gesture that sent warmth spreading through her entire body. It was brief, almost chaste compared to the passion they had once shared, but laden with meaning neither of them was ready to fully articulate. I'll be back as soon as possible, he promised, pulling away reluctantly. If anything changes with your condition, anything at all, call me immediately. I will, she assured him, still slightly dazed from the unexpected kiss. Now go save your empire, Riker Devereaux. After he left, Nadia touched her fingers to her lips, the sensation of his kiss lingering like a promise. 6 months of anger and betrayal had conditioned her to view Riker as the villain in her story, the powerful man who had discarded her for corporate convenience. Reconciling that perception with the man who had just kissed her with such tender intensity, who was rushing to Chicago to fight for his company while clearly leaving his heart behind in her hospital room, required a mental adjustment she was still struggling to make. The next 24 hours passed with excruciating slowness. Nadia tried to distract herself with work Maya had brought, with mindless television, with a novel she'd been too stressed to read since her hospitalization began. Nothing held her attention for long, her thoughts constantly returning to Riker facing the board, confronting Vivian, fighting to maintain control of the company he had built from nothing. Maya arrived in the afternoon with lunch that wasn't hospital food, a small mercy, and updates on client projects that required Nadia's input. But even her assistant's cheerful presence couldn't fully distract from the tension of waiting for news from Chicago. Have you heard anything? Maya asked finally, abandoning the pretense that they were focused on research matters rather than the corporate drama unfolding 100 miles away. Nothing, Nadia admitted. The board meeting started 4 hours ago. It could be a good sign that it's taking so long. Maybe they're actually considering all the evidence rather than rushing to judgment. Or maybe Riker is in the process of dismantling Vivian piece by painful piece, Maya suggested with a vindictive grin. I'd pay good money to see that showdown. Nadia smiled despite her anxiety. I'm trying not to think about it too much. Stress isn't good for the baby. Aha. Maya's expression grew more serious. Speaking of the baby, have you thought about what happens after she's born? With you and Riker, I mean. I've thought about little else, Nadia admitted, but I don't have any clear answers yet. Do you trust him now, knowing what really happened with Vivian? I trust that he never asked me to terminate the pregnancy, Nadia said carefully. I trust that he's genuinely committed to being a father to our daughter. Beyond that. She sighed, one hand absently stroking her belly. Trust is complicated when you've believed someone capable of complete betrayal for 6 months. But it wasn't him who betrayed you, Maya pointed out. It was Vivian. I know that logically, but emotionally. Nadia shook her head. There's still this voice inside me asking, what if it happens again? What if someone else manipulates the situation? What if his business priorities eventually do conflict with our family? The next time, there's no convenient villain to blame. That's the risk with any relationship, though, isn't it? Maya leaned forward, unexpectedly philosophical. You never know for sure what challenges will come, what choices the other person will make when tested. Most relationships don't start with this level of complication, Nadia countered. True, but most don't get this kind of clarity either. Maya gestured toward Nadia's pregnant belly. You've seen Riker at what he believed was his worst moment. Discovering your pregnancy, thinking you'd left him without explanation, then finding you again 6 months later. And how did he respond? By dropping everything to be at your side, fighting for his child, confronting the person who hurt you both. Put that way, Riker's actions did suggest a depth of commitment Nadia had been reluctant to fully acknowledge, not just words or promises, but concrete actions that prioritized her and their daughter above all else, including the company he had spent his life building. Before she could respond, her phone rang, Riker's name flashing on the screen. Nadia answered immediately, heart racing with anticipation and dread. It's over, he said without preamble, his voice weary but triumphant. The board voted unanimously to retain me as CEO and to accept Vivian's termination as presented. Relief flooded through Nadia. That's wonderful news. What happened? The evidence was overwhelming. Julian's documentation of Vivian's manipulation, both of company matters and our personal situation, left no room for doubt. But what truly sealed her fate was the testimony of Mako Novaxis. Mako Novaxis? The heir to Novaxis Pharmaceuticals? Nadia echoed in surprise. How was he involved? He revealed that Vivian had approached him months ago with a proposal that went far beyond business, a marriage arrangement that would cement the merger at the highest levels, as she put it. When he declined, she implied that his family's position would be weakened in the final negotiations. The disgust in Riker's voice was palpable. He kept silent until now out of cultural respect for the merger process. But when he heard about her actions toward you and our child, he decided to speak up. So it wasn't just about controlling you or eliminating me as a distraction, Nadia finished, understanding dawning. She was positioning herself for total control of the merged company, possibly even through marriage into the Novaxis family. Exactly. Her ambition was even more calculated than we realized. Riker sounded bone-weary, the strain of the confrontation evident in his voice. The board has authorized a full investigation into all of Vivian's actions during her tenure. There may be other manipulations we haven't yet discovered. When are you coming back? Nadia asked, surprised by how much she wanted him to return to her side. That's the other news, Riker said, his tone shifting to something more hesitant. The Novaxis family has requested my presence in Tokyo immediately to renegotiate certain aspects of the merger in light of these developments. It's a critical moment, Their trust has been shaken by Vivian's actions, and personal reassurance from me could be the difference between salvaging the deal or watching it collapse entirely. Nadia felt her heart sink despite her best efforts to remain pragmatic. "You're going to Tokyo." I told them no. The simple statement hung in the air between them, its implications vast and immediate. Riker Devereaux, notorious workaholic and corporate titan, had refused a critical international business meeting for her sake. "You what?" Nadia couldn't keep the shock from her voice. "I told them I have a more pressing commitment to my family," Riker explained, a new certainty in his tone. "That my place is with you and our daughter until your medical situation is stable. I offered to arrange video conferences, to send my most trusted executives in my place, to accommodate any requirements they might have for remote negotiations. And they accepted that?" Disbelief colored her question. "Actually, yes." There was a hint of surprise in Riker's voice. Mako Novaxis in particular seemed to approve of my priorities. He said it demonstrated the kind of leadership values their family respects, putting family obligations above personal gain. "So you're coming back?" Nadia said, unable to keep the relief from her voice. "I'm already on my way. I should be there by tonight, assuming traffic cooperates." The warmth in his tone wrapped around her like an embrace. "How are you feeling? Any changes?" "Everything's stable," she assured him. "Dr. Lawson says if things continue this way, they might consider releasing me to bed rest at home next week." "That's excellent news." "I'll see you soon, Nadia." He paused, then added softly, "I miss you. Both of you." After they hung up, Nadia found Maya watching her with a knowing smile. "What?" she demanded, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "Nothing," Maya replied innocently. "Just observing that for someone who's uncertain about trusting Riker Devereaux again, you look remarkably happy that he's chosen you over Tokyo." "It's more complicated than that," Nadia protested, though the warmth spreading through her suggested otherwise. "Is it?" Maya raised an eyebrow. "Seems pretty straightforward to me. Powerful CEO discovers he's about to be a father, drops everything to be by your side, fights off corporate coup attempt, then turns down critical international business to return to your hospital room. If that's not a declaration of priorities, I don't know what is." Put that way, Riker's actions did paint a compelling picture of a man who had fundamentally re-evaluated what mattered most to him, not with words or promises, but with choices that carried significant professional consequences. "I'm still figuring it out," Nadia admitted. "But yes, I'm glad he's coming back." That evening, when Riker returned to the hospital room looking exhausted but triumphant, Nadia felt something shift inside her, a willingness to believe that perhaps their story wasn't over after all, just interrupted by circumstances neither of them could have foreseen. As Nadia's condition stabilized, Dr. Lawson eventually approved her release to strict bed rest at home, with regular monitoring and instructions to return immediately at the first sign of contractions or other concerning symptoms. The transition to home care brought unexpected complications. Nadia's small apartment wasn't ideally configured for extended bed rest, the bathroom was too cramped for easy access, there was no space for medical equipment if needed, and the second bedroom she'd been converting to a nursery was barely large enough for a crib, let alone the additional monitoring setup Dr. Lawson required. "I have a suggestion," Riker said carefully the day before her scheduled release. "I've leased a house here in Milwaukee. Single level, fully accessible, with room for medical equipment and a private suite for you." Nadia's eyebrows shot up. "You leased a house without consulting me?" "I leased a house to provide the best possible care for you and our daughter," Riker clarified, clearly choosing his words with precision. "I'm not assuming you'll live there permanently or that we'll live there together beyond your medical needs. It's simply the most practical solution to an immediate problem." The measured reasonableness of his response diffused Nadia's instinctive resistance. He wasn't making assumptions about their future or pressuring her into domestic arrangements before she was ready. He was simply doing what he did best, identifying a problem and implementing the most efficient solution, regardless of cost. "Can I at least see pictures of this house before I agree to recover there?" she asked, softening her tone to indicate she wasn't actually angry. Riker's relieved smile suggested he'd been prepared for a more contentious response. "Of course." He retrieved his tablet, opening a folder of photographs. "It's on the north side of the city, overlooking the lake. Private but not isolated, with enough land around it to ensure quiet." The images revealed a modern single-story home with expansive windows capturing stunning water views. The architecture was contemporary but warm, with natural materials and thoughtful design that immediately appealed to Nadia. "It's beautiful," she admitted, swiping through photographs of spacious rooms filled with natural light. "I've arranged for a medical suite to be installed in what would normally be the master bedroom. There's a separate room nearby that can serve as a nursery when the time comes." He hesitated. "I'll be staying in the guest suite on the opposite side of the house. Close enough to help if needed, but with appropriate distance." The careful way he navigated their undefined relationship status, present but not presumptuous, supportive but not smothering, continued to chip away at Nadia's lingering reservations. This was not the behavior of a man interested in controlling her life or making decisions without her input. This was someone trying, sometimes imperfectly but always sincerely, to balance care with respect for her independence. 3 days later, as Nadia settled into the comfortably appointed bedroom of her temporary home, she was surprised by an unexpected visitor, her twin sister, Sophia, arriving unannounced with determination written across her identical features. "I told you I'd come if you needed me," Sophia announced, dropping her designer luggage in the doorway as she surveyed the luxurious surroundings with transparent skepticism. "Though I see you've already accepted quite a bit from Mr. Moneybags." Sophia. Despite her sister's evident disapproval, Nadia couldn't contain her joy at seeing her twin. "I thought you were in Hong Kong until next month." "I was. Then my pregnant sister ended up in the hospital with premature labor, and suddenly Hong Kong seemed less important." Sophia's sharp gaze softened as she embraced Nadia carefully. "You look better than I expected, given everything. The bed rest is helping. And the reduced stress." Nadia hesitated, then added, "Riker has been amazing, actually." Sophia's perfectly arched eyebrow rose even higher. "Has he? And where is Prince Charming now?" "On a conference call in his office. The Novaxis merger is in the final stages." Nadia shifted uncomfortably under her sister's scrutiny. "You should give him a chance, sophomore. He really was manipulated by Vivian, just like I was." "So he says," Sophia replied, her tone making it clear she remained unconvinced. "And now he's conveniently installed you in his luxury lakeside property where he can keep an eye on you." "It's not like that," Nadia protested. "He's been respectful of my space, my independence. The separate bedrooms were his idea, not mine." "Separate bedrooms?" Genuine surprise flickered across Sophia's face. "That's unexpected." "He's trying, Sophia. Really trying to do this right." Nadia caught her sister's hand. "Will you at least meet him without preconceptions? For me?" Sophia studied her for a long moment, her expression softening. "Fine. But if I see even a hint that he's manipulating you or planning to control you through this child, all bets are off." The meeting between Riker and Sophia that evening was as tense as Nadia had feared. Her twin had built a successful career as a venture capital investor by being ruthlessly perceptive about people's motives, and she subjected Riker to the full force of that scrutiny from the moment he entered the room. So, Sophia began without preamble as they sat in the living room, Nadia propped up on the sofa as per doctor's orders. "You expect us to believe that your highly trusted COO orchestrated this entire separation without your knowledge or consent?" "I don't expect anything," Riker replied evenly. "I've presented the evidence we've discovered. What you choose to believe is entirely up to you. Convenient that all blame lands on a woman who can't defend herself now that you've had her fired and blacklisted from the industry." "Sophia," Nadia cautioned, "you haven't seen the evidence. Actually, Riker interrupted, I'd be happy to show Ms. Moreno everything we've uncovered. The security footage, the email logs, the testimony from Mako Novaxis. Full transparency. Something like grudging respect flickered in Sophia's eyes. I'd like that. I'll have Julian compile everything for your review first thing tomorrow. Riker's tone remained cordial despite the hostility radiating from Nadia's twin. I understand your skepticism, Ms. Moreno. In your position, I'd feel the same way. Your sister was deeply hurt by actions attributed to me, and you want to protect her from further pain. Damn right I do. Sophia's protective fury was so familiar, so comforting, that Nadia almost smiled despite the tension. Then we share a common goal, Riker said simply. Because I want the same thing. The sincerity in his voice seemed to catch Sophia off guard. She studied him thoughtfully before delivering her next volley. And what happens when the merger is complete? When the baby is born? When the next corporate crisis demands your attention? How do we know you won't revert to type, the ruthless businessman who puts profit above people? You don't, Riker acknowledged with unexpected candor. I can only demonstrate through consistent actions that my priorities have changed. But I will say this, his gaze shifted to Nadia, his expression softening. Finding Nadia again, discovering our child still exists, has fundamentally altered how I see everything. The merger, the company, my entire life's work, none of it matters compared to them. Sophia seemed momentarily speechless at his raw honesty. Before she could formulate a response, Riker's phone buzzed with an urgent message. Excuse me, he said after glancing at the screen. I need to take this. It's Tokyo. After he left the room, Sophia turned to her sister with an expression of reluctant reassessment. Well, he's either the world's best actor or he's genuinely in love with you. Is it that obvious? Nadia asked softly. It's written all over his face every time he looks at you, Sophia confirmed. I've seen men worth billions in negotiation, and none of them drop their guard the way he does when you're in the room. He's been incredible throughout all of this, Nadia admitted. Patient, supportive, never pushing for more than I'm ready to give. And what are you ready to give? Sophia asked directly. Because from where I'm sitting, you look just as gone for him as he is for you. Nadia's hand moved automatically to her swollen belly, feeling her daughter's reassuring movements beneath her palm. I'm still figuring that out. We both need time to heal from what happened. Just be careful, Sophia advised, her expression softening. Not because I think he's lying, but because relationships that start in crisis often struggle when normality returns. Is that the voice of experience talking? Nadia asked gently, aware of her sister's string of intense but short-lived relationships. Maybe, Sophia admitted with a rueful smile. Just promise me you'll protect yourself, your heart and your future, no matter what. I promise, Nadia assured her. But I'm beginning to think that future might include Riker in a way I couldn't have imagined a month ago. The days that followed established a new kind of intimacy between Nadia and Riker, not the physical passion they had once shared, but something equally powerful in its way. Riker worked from a home office adjacent to Nadia's medical suite, always available when she needed anything, but careful not to hover. They shared meals, discussed business challenges, debated current events, and gradually rediscovered the intellectual connection that had first drawn them together. In the evenings, Riker often read aloud to the baby, everything from classic literature to scientific journals, his deep voice rumbling soothingly through the room as Nadia drifted in and out of sleep. Sometimes, in those twilight moments between wakefulness and dreams, she would feel his hand resting lightly on her belly, connecting with their daughter as she shifted and kicked within. Sophia stayed for 5 days, her initial hostility gradually giving way to cautious approval as she witnessed firsthand how Riker prioritized Nadia's well-being over every other demand on his time. Even the critical negotiations with Novaxis were scheduled around Nadia's medical appointments and rest periods, with Riker taking calls from Tokyo at 3 a.m. rather than disturbing her sleep. I still think you're moving too fast, Sophia warned the night before her departure, sitting beside Nadia's bed during their private sister time. But I have to admit, he's not what I expected. What did you expect? Nadia asked. A manipulative control freak using this crisis to reassert his claim on you and the baby. Sophia's bluntness made Nadia wince, though she wasn't surprised by it. Instead, he's been respectful, transparent, and genuinely attentive to your needs. It's almost disappointing. I was prepared to destroy him. Nadia laughed at her twin's disgruntled expression. Sorry to deprive you of the opportunity. There's still time, Sophia replied with a mischievous glint in her eye identical to Nadia's own. If he steps out of line, I'll be on the first plane back. I know you will, Nadia said softly, reaching for her sister's hand. Thank you for coming. For being here when I needed you. Always, Sophia promised, squeezing Nadia's fingers. Twin pact, remember. No matter what. By the time Nadia reached 32 weeks of pregnancy, a fragile peace had settled over their unconventional household. The immediate danger of premature delivery had passed, though she remained on modified bed rest as a precaution. Riker had established a routine of splitting his time between Milwaukee and Chicago, never away for more than 24 hours, always returning with the focused attentiveness of someone who had missed her even during that brief absence. They still hadn't defined their relationship beyond co-parents with a complicated history. But the question of what came next lingered unspoken between them with increasing frequency. Nadia found herself watching Riker when he was absorbed in work calls, studying the familiar angles of his face, the intensity of his focus, the rare smile that transformed his features when something pleased him. She was falling in love with him again, or perhaps, more accurately, discovering that she had never truly stopped loving him, despite 6 months of believing he had betrayed her in the most fundamental way. The realization was both frightening and exhilarating, pushing her toward a decision she had been avoiding since their reunion. The opportunity to address it came unexpectedly one evening as they sat on the covered patio, watching a spectacular sunset over Lake Michigan. Nadia had been granted permission for limited, vertical time each day, and these sunset viewings had become a cherished ritual, a brief escape from the monotony of bed rest. The Novaxis merger finalizes tomorrow, Riker said, breaking a comfortable silence. The last documents will be signed in Tokyo at 9 a.m. their time. That's wonderful news, Nadia replied, genuinely happy for his professional success despite the complicated emotions surrounding the merger's origins. You must be relieved after all the turbulence. I am. He turned to look at her, his expression contemplative in the fading light. But it's also caused me to reflect on what happens next. Not just for Devereaux Pharmaceuticals, but for us. His directness caught her off guard. We've been existing in this strange limbo, co-parenting without defining what that means beyond our daughter's birth. Living together without acknowledging what we both feel. At least, he hesitated, vulnerability replacing his usual confidence, what I hope we both feel. Nadia's heart raced as the conversation shifted into territory they had carefully avoided for weeks. And what do you feel, Riker? That I love you. That I never stopped loving you. The simple declaration hung in the air between them. That these weeks with you, despite the circumstances, have been the happiest of my life. That I want a future with you and our daughter, not just as co-parents, but as partners in every sense. The words Nadia had both longed for and feared, finally spoken aloud with no ambiguity or qualification. She searched his face in the golden sunset light, looking for any hint of the calculated businessman making a strategic move. She found only raw honesty, a man laying his heart bare with no guarantee of reciprocation. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Not of you, exactly, but of us. Of how completely I fell apart when I thought you had betrayed me. Of how easily someone managed to separate us once before. I understand that fear, Riker said, reaching for her hand across the small table between them. I live with it too, the knowledge that I failed to protect what mattered most, that I was so focused on business concerns I didn't see the threat right beside me. So how do we move forward with that fear? How do we trust again? By acknowledging that nothing in life is guaranteed. By choosing each other every day despite the risks. His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. And by building something stronger than before, with better foundations and clearer communication. That sounds suspiciously like a business strategy, Nadia observed with a small smile. Perhaps, Riker conceded, returning her smile. But it's also the truth. I can't promise we'll never face challenges, or that no one will ever try to come between us again. I can only promise that I've learned what truly matters, and that I will fight for us with everything I have. The baby kicked then, a strong movement that made Nadia place her free hand on her belly. She always seems to have opinions about our important conversations. Smart girl, Riker said, his expression softening as he watched Nadia's hand move in response to their daughter's movements. She knows we're discussing her future too. The simple observation crystallized something for Nadia, the reality that her choices now affected not just herself, not just her relationship with Riker, but the family environment their daughter would grow up in. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still unwritten, waiting for them to be brave enough to claim it. I love you too, she said finally, the words emerging with surprising ease once she allowed herself to speak them. I tried not to. I tried to protect myself by keeping emotional distance. But the truth is, watching you these past weeks, how you've prioritized us, how you've respected my independence while still offering support, how you fundamentally reorganized your life around our needs, it's shown me who you really are. Relief and joy transformed Riker's features. And who am I, in your estimation? A man worth trusting with my heart again, Nadia replied simply. A man I want to build a future with, however complicated that might be. Riker moved from his chair to kneel beside hers, one hand cradling her face with infinite tenderness. I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of that trust, he promised, his voice rough with emotion. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like both homecoming and new beginning, gentle at first, then deepening with the release of months of unacknowledged longing. When they finally parted, breathless and slightly dazed, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in dramatic purples and deep blues. What happens now? Nadia asked, her hands still entwined with his. Whatever we want, Riker replied, the certainty in his voice a counterpoint to the open-ended promise of his words. We design our future together, on our terms, not according to anyone else's expectations or timelines. As a scientist, Nadia appreciated the metaphor, a future they would create together, built on a foundation of hard-won wisdom and mutual respect. Not perfect, perhaps, but stronger for having weathered the storms that had nearly destroyed them. I'd like that, she said, leaning forward to kiss him again, sealing their new beginning with a gesture that spoke more eloquently than words. If you've ever had to rebuild trust after a devastating betrayal, you know the courage it takes to open your heart again. Would you have been able to forgive and move forward like Nadia, or would the scars run too deep? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story of rediscovered love speaks to you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of redemption that prove sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come after the most painful endings. 2 weeks later, at precisely 34 weeks of pregnancy, Nadia's water broke during a telehealth appointment with Dr. Lawson, timing that later struck her as eerily convenient, as if her daughter had waited for medical supervision before making her dramatic entrance. The journey to the hospital was a blur of controlled urgency, Riker driving with the focused intensity he brought to everything that mattered, one hand gripping Nadia's through each increasingly powerful contraction. Unlike her previous premature labor scare, this time there was no stopping the process. Their daughter had decided her time in the womb was complete. 34 weeks is excellent, Dr. Lawson reassured them as Nadia was settled into the delivery room. Her lungs should be well developed, and all her vital systems are functioning. She'll likely need some time in the NICU, but the prognosis is very positive. The labor progressed with unexpected speed for a first-time mother, as if their daughter was as impatient to meet them as they were to meet her. Riker remained at Nadia's side throughout, his steady presence an anchor during the waves of pain and exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm her. "You're doing amazingly," he murmured against her temple during a brief respite between contractions. "You're the strongest person I've ever known, Nadia Moreno." "I don't feel strong right now," she admitted, gripping his hand as another contraction began to build. "Then borrow some of mine," he offered simply. "I have more than enough for both of us." 7 hours after arriving at the hospital, their daughter made her entrance into the world. Small but mighty, her angry cry announcing her displeasure at the bright lights and cold air of the delivery room. At 4 pounds 6 ounces, she was tiny but perfect, with a shock of dark hair and the same determined expression Nadia had seen countless times on Riker's face when confronting a challenge. "She's beautiful," Riker whispered in awe as the nurses performed initial assessments before placing the swaddled infant briefly on Nadia's chest. "She looks like you." "She has your scowl," Nadia countered with exhausted humor, drinking in the precious details of their daughter's face during the moments before she would be taken to the NICU for more specialized care. "And your determination." She wasn't going to wait another day, no matter what the doctors recommended. A decisive executive, Riker agreed, one finger gently stroking the baby's cheek. "Already taking charge of her timeline." Too soon, a neonatal specialist approached to take their daughter to the NICU, explaining the standard procedures for premature infants and assuring them they could visit as soon as Nadia was stabilized. As the tiny bundle was lifted from her chest, Nadia felt a moment of panic and instinctive resistance to being separated from her child. "I'll go with her," Riker said immediately, recognizing Nadia's distress. "I won't let her out of my sight." "We haven't even named her yet," Nadia realized suddenly, the whirlwind of delivery having pushed that critical detail from her mind. Riker paused, looking back at her with unexpected certainty. "Aria," he suggested. "It means song or melody. Like the lullabies you've been humming to her all these months." "Aria," Nadia repeated, the name settling perfectly into her heart. "Aria Moreno Devereaux." The double surname came naturally, a recognition of the joined lives their daughter represented. Riker's expression softened with emotion as he registered the significance of her choice. "Perfect," he said simply, bending to kiss Nadia's forehead before following the medical team and their newly named daughter. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of NICU visits, medical consultations, and adjusting to the reality of parenthood ahead of schedule. Aria proved to be as determined outside the womb as she had been inside it, meeting developmental milestones with a precocious efficiency that amused her doctors and filled her parents with equal measures of pride and exhaustion. "She's definitely your daughter," Nadia observed one evening as they sat beside the NICU incubator, watching Aria grip Riker's finger with surprising strength. That focused expression, the refusal to accept limitations, pure Devereaux. With Moreno brilliance and vision, Riker countered, smiling as the tiny hand maintained its determined hold. "She's the best of both of us." The simple observation carried depths of meaning beyond their daughter's genetic inheritance. In their journey from lovers to strangers to co-parents to partners reunited, they had each contributed essential elements to the relationship they were rebuilding: Riker's steadfast commitment and strategic thinking, Nadia's resilience and principled integrity. When Aria was finally cleared for discharge at 2 weeks old, still tiny but thriving, with no signs of the complications that often affected premature infants, they brought her home to the lakeside house that had begun as a temporary medical arrangement and gradually transformed into something that felt remarkably like a permanent home. The nursery, previously prepared but unused, welcomed its intended occupant with soft lighting and the gentle hum of a state-of-the-art air purification system. Standing in the doorway, watching as Riker gently settled their daughter into her bassinet, Nadia felt a wave of emotion so powerful it nearly overwhelmed her. This moment had seemed impossible 6 months ago when she'd fled Chicago, believing Riker had rejected both her and their unborn child. That they had found their way here, through deception and pain to truth and healing, seemed nothing short of miraculous. "She's finally asleep," Riker whispered, backing carefully away from the bassinet after confirming Aria was settled. "The monitor's on. We should rest while we can." As they moved quietly from the nursery to their bedroom, now shared without question or hesitation, Nadia paused in the hallway, turning to face the man who had become her partner in every sense of the word. "I never imagined this," she admitted softly. "When I saw you on the highway that day, when you recognized I was pregnant, I thought it was the worst moment of my life. I thought you would try to take her from me, or deny her, or make me regret keeping her. And instead—" Riker prompted gently, his hands coming to rest lightly on her waist. "Instead, it was the beginning of everything important," Nadia replied, leaning into his embrace. "The moment our lives finally started moving in the right direction again." "Not without some significant detours," Riker observed with a rueful smile. "But yes, I know exactly what you mean. Seeing you pregnant that day, it was like being given a second chance I never thought possible. Do you think we would have found each other again if not for that chance encounter?" The question had lingered in Nadia's mind through the months of their reunion and reconciliation. "I believe we would," Riker said with unexpected certainty. "I was looking for you, Nadia. Had been since the day you disappeared. The private investigators, the search parameters, they would have found you eventually, especially after Arya was born and her birth certificate was filed. So fate just accelerated the inevitable." "Perhaps." His expression grew more serious, his hands tightening slightly at her waist. "Or perhaps we made our own fate through the choices that followed that moment. You chose to listen when I claimed innocence. I chose to investigate rather than assume. We both chose truth over comfortable lies or easy resentment." The perspective resonated with Nadia's own beliefs about life, that while circumstances might be beyond our control, our responses to them shaped the path forward. She and Riker had been victims of manipulation, yes, but they had also been architects of their own reconciliation, building something new from the rubble of what had been destroyed. "We still have challenges ahead," she reminded him, practical even in this moment of reflection. "Your company is based in Chicago. My research is here. There's the question of where we'll live long-term, how we'll balance two careers with parenthood. All solvable problems," Riker replied with the confidence of a man accustomed to finding solutions where others saw only obstacles. "We'll figure it out together, one step at a time." And as if to punctuate his assurance, Arya's cry emanated from the nursery, not distressed, but demanding, already asserting her place in their newly formed family unit. They exchanged rueful smiles of new parents experiencing the reality of interrupted conversations and sleep deprivation. Together, Nadia agreed, taking his hand as they turned back toward the nursery and their impatient daughter. One step at a time. In that moment, surrounded by the home they shared and moving toward the child they had created, Nadia felt a certainty that had eluded her for months. Their story wasn't a fairy tale of perfect love unchallenged by hardship. It was something far more valuable, a hard-won connection forged through crisis, tested by deception, and ultimately strengthened by the conscious choice to build something true together. 6 months earlier, she had believed herself abandoned by the man she loved, left to navigate pregnancy and motherhood alone. Now she walked hand in hand with that same man toward their daughter's room, their future stretching before them not as a predetermined path, but as a landscape of possibilities they would explore together, not perfect, not easy, but undeniably, unmistakably theirs. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more powerful stories of miscommunication, redemption, and hard-won second chances. Share this with someone who needs to remember that the truth has a way of emerging, even from our darkest moments. Sometimes what tears us apart is not what we say to each other, but what remains unsaid. The courage to speak truth, to listen deeply, and to question our assumptions can transform our greatest heartbreaks into our most profound connections. 3 months after Arya's birth, Nadia stood in the sleek glass offices of Devereaux Pharmaceuticals' research division, observing her team as they conducted the preliminary trials for what might be the company's next breakthrough treatment. The return to work had been both challenging and exhilarating, a reclaiming of the professional identity she'd feared lost forever when she fled Chicago. Maya had made the transition with her, accepting a position as Nadia's deputy director with characteristic enthusiasm. From a tiny lab in Milwaukee to the cutting edge of pharmaceutical research, she'd remarked during their first day. Not a bad career trajectory for 6 months. The merger with Novaxis had proceeded smoothly once Vivian's manipulations were exposed, creating one of the largest research-focused pharmaceutical companies in the world. True to his word, Riker had restructured the leadership to ensure that research and development, Nadia's domain, received priority attention and funding. Dr. Moreno. Maya's voice pulled Nadia from her thoughts. The preliminary results from the P53 trials just came in. You're going to want to see this. As Nadia reviewed the data, excitement building with each promising result, her phone chimed with a message from Riker, meeting ending early. Picking up Arya from daycare. Dinner at 7. The simple domestic communication brought a smile to her face. They had established a rhythm these past months, both pursuing their careers with renewed passion while creating space for their family life to flourish. The lakeside house in Milwaukee had become their permanent residence, with Riker commuting to Chicago 3 days a week and working remotely the rest of the time. It hadn't been without challenges. The board had initially questioned Riker's decision to base himself primarily outside of headquarters, and Nadia had struggled with the inevitable guilt that came with being a working mother. But they had navigated each obstacle together, refusing to allow external pressures to dictate their choices. These results are remarkable, Nadia told Maya, focusing back on the data before her. If they hold through the next phase, we could be looking at a treatment protocol that's twice as effective with half the side effects of current therapies. Should we call Riker? This could significantly impact next quarter's research allocation. Let's wait until we have the full data set, Nadia decided. I'd rather present him with comprehensive results than preliminary excitement. She smiled. Besides, tonight is family time. Work can wait until morning. Later that evening, as she drove home along the lakeshore, Nadia reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just 9 months. From a frightened, pregnant woman fleeing in a rainstorm to the director of research at Novaxis Pharmaceuticals, mother to a thriving infant, and partner to the man she had once believed to be her greatest enemy. The house came into view, its warm lights glowing against the darkening sky. Through the front window, she could see Riker moving about the kitchen, Arya secured in a carrier against his chest, the powerful CEO and devoted father in one image. Inside, the familiar scent of Riker's cooking filled the air, along with the soft sounds of classical music and Arya's occasional happy gurgle. Welcome home, Riker greeted her, bending to kiss her lightly. How was the lab? Promising, Nadia replied, already reaching for their daughter. The P53 inhibitor is showing remarkable efficacy in early trials. That's fantastic, he said with genuine enthusiasm, returning to the stove where something delicious simmered. You'll have to tell me all about it over dinner. And your day? She asked, breathing in the sweet scent of Arya's hair, the perfect antidote to a day of clinical testing and statistical analysis. Board meeting, quarterly projections, the usual. He shrugged dismissively. Though Mako Novaxis mentioned he's extremely pleased with the direction of our integrated research programs. Your name came up specifically. Did it? Nadia raised an eyebrow, settling into one of the kitchen stools with Arya still in her arms. It seems your reputation extends well beyond Devereaux. He asked if you might consider a presentation to their research team in Tokyo next month. Tokyo? Surprise colored her voice. That's a long trip with an infant. It is, Riker agreed, which is why Mako suggested we all come. Make it a working trip for both of us, but with time built in for Arya to meet her extended Novaxis family, as he put it. The idea was appealing, a chance to showcase her research internationally while also introducing their daughter to the world beyond Milwaukee and Chicago. It represented everything they were building together, a life where career ambitions and family priorities weren't opposing forces but complementary elements of a shared vision. I think I'd like that, Nadia said, watching as Riker moved confidently around the kitchen, so different from the coldly efficient CEO she had first met, yet still possessing the same core strength and determination. It seems right that Arya should understand from the beginning that her parents' work matters, that what we do helps people. Just as she'll understand that she matters most of all, Riker added, his expression softening as he glanced at their daughter. That some things are non-negotiable, regardless of what's at stake professionally. The simple statement encapsulated the fundamental shift in their priorities, the lesson they had learned through painful separation and joyful reunion. Success meant nothing without someone to share it with, ambition was empty if it required sacrificing the people who mattered most. As they settled into dinner, trading stories about their respective days and taking turns soothing Arya when she fussed, Nadia was struck by the ordinary extraordinariness of their life together. It wasn't perfect, they still disagreed about many things, still had to navigate the complexities of dual careers and parenthood, but it was real, built on honesty and mutual respect rather than convenience or calculation. Later that night, with Arya finally settled in her crib, Nadia found Riker on the deck overlooking the lake, his expression thoughtful as he gazed out at the moonlight reflecting on the water. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "I was thinking about Vivian, actually," he admitted, covering her hands with his own. "The board received a letter from her today. She's in Singapore, working for a pharmaceutical startup. She requested that we lift the non-compete clause in her termination agreement. And will you? The board wants my recommendation." He turned to face her, his expression troubled. "What do you think I should do?" The question wasn't merely about a legal clause or a former employee. It represented something deeper, how they would handle the lingering effects of the betrayal that had nearly destroyed them, whether they would choose vengeance or compassion. "She nearly cost us everything," Nadia said slowly, thinking through her response. "Our relationship, our daughter, our trust in each other." "Yes," Riker agreed, his jaw tightening at the memory. "But look at what we have now," Nadia continued, gesturing toward the house where their daughter slept peacefully. "We survived her manipulation. We're stronger for it. Perhaps the most fitting response isn't to restrict her future, but to show that her actions ultimately failed to diminish ours." Riker studied her face in the moonlight, admiration evident in his gaze. "Your capacity for forgiveness continues to humble me." "It's not forgiveness exactly," Nadia clarified. "I don't know if I'll ever forgive her for what she tried to do to our child. But holding on to that anger only gives her continued power over our lives. I'd rather focus on building our future than punishing her past actions." He considered her words, then nodded slowly. "I'll recommend lifting the clause with certain limitations. She can work in the industry but not with any of our direct competitors or partners for another 2 years." "A compromise," Nadia observed with a small smile. "Very diplomatic." "I'm learning," he replied, drawing her closer. "From you, mostly. Balance, perspective, the ability to see beyond immediate reaction to longer-term consequences." "And I'm learning from you," she countered. "Strategic thinking, calculated risk, the confidence to pursue ambitious goals. We make a good team, Dr. Moreno." "Indeed we do, Mr. Devereaux." The easy exchange, the natural complementarity of their strengths and perspectives, reinforced what they had both come to understand. That their relationship worked not because they were identical in outlook or approach, but because their differences created a more complete whole when joined in mutual respect and common purpose. As they returned inside, checking on Arya one last time before retiring to their room, Nadia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From colleagues to lovers to strangers to co-parents to partners, each transition shaped by choices both within and beyond their control, each phase contributing essential elements to the relationship they now shared. 6 months after their dramatic reunion in the rain, Riker surprised Nadia with a small velvet box over breakfast. It wasn't their anniversary or any special occasion she could recall. "What's this?" she asked, looking up from feeding Arya, who was now a chubby, cheerful 8-month-old with her father's determination and her mother's analytical gaze. "Open it," Riker urged, an uncharacteristic nervousness in his expression. Inside lay a stunning emerald ring surrounded by diamonds, the very ring he had purchased 6 months into their first relationship, the one he'd planned to give her the night she told him about her pregnancy. "I've been carrying this for over a year now," he said quietly. First waiting for the right moment to ask you, then searching for you to ask you, and finally waiting again until we rebuilt enough trust for the asking to mean what it should. Riker, she began, emotion catching in her throat. He took the box from her hands, removing the ring as he knelt beside her chair. I'm not asking you to be my wife because of Arya, though she's the greatest gift I could have imagined. I'm asking because you're the strongest, most brilliant, most compassionate woman I've ever known. Because these months with you have shown me what true partnership means, supporting each other's dreams while building a shared vision of the future. Arya gurgled happily from her high chair, as if offering her approval of the proceedings. Even our daughter agrees, Riker smiled, glancing at their baby before returning his gaze to Nadia. Marry me, Nadia. Not because we have to, or because it's expected, but because I want to spend my life loving you, learning from you, growing with you through whatever challenges and triumphs lie ahead. Nadia looked from the ring to the man kneeling before her, then to the daughter they had created together, the living embodiment of a love that had survived deliberate sabotage, painful separation, and difficult reconciliation. Yes, she said simply, feeling the rightness of the decision in every cell of her being. Yes, I'll marry you. As Riker slipped the ring onto her finger, finally reaching its intended destination after so many detours, Nadia was struck by how perfectly it fit, as if it had always been meant for her hand, just as they had always been meant to find their way back to each other, despite the forces that had conspired to keep them apart. The wedding took place 3 months later, a small, intimate ceremony on the shores of Lake Michigan. Sophia served as maid of honor, her initial skepticism about Riker long since transformed into grudging approval and eventually genuine affection. Maya, now a close friend as well as a trusted colleague, stood alongside her, while Julian represented Riker as best man. Arya, now approaching her first birthday, served as a particularly enthusiastic flower girl, carried down the aisle by her Aunt Sophia, reaching out to grab at the rose petals scattered along the path. As Nadia walked toward Riker, radiant in a simple ivory gown that highlighted her natural beauty, she caught sight of an unexpected figure standing discreetly at the back of the gathering, Vivian Palmer, elegant as ever in a conservative blue suit, her expression unreadable as she observed the union she had once tried so desperately to prevent. Their eyes met briefly, and Nadia felt not anger but a strange sense of completion. The invitation had been Riker's idea, not a gesture of forgiveness but an acknowledgement that without Vivian's interference, however malicious, they might never have discovered the true strength of their commitment to each other. Vivian inclined her head slightly in what might have been apology or merely recognition, then turned and walked away before the ceremony began, a ghost from their past receding as they embraced their future. The vows they exchanged were both traditional and uniquely their own, promises not just of love and fidelity but of partnership, respect, and the courage to choose trust even when fear suggested otherwise. I promise to listen when doubt arises, Riker vowed, holding both her hands in his, to seek truth rather than assumption, to remember that our strength lies not in perfection but in how we address our imperfections together. I promise to value our differences as much as our similarities, Nadia responded, to recognize that disagreement isn't rejection, and that the family we build together is strengthened, not weakened, by the unique perspectives we each bring. As they sealed their promises with a kiss, Arya's delighted squeal from Sophia's arms provided the perfect punctuation, a reminder of the joy that had emerged from the pain the family created despite the forces that had tried to prevent its existence. The reception that followed was a celebration not just of their marriage but of the journey that had brought them to this moment, the scientific brilliance that had first drawn them together, the corporate intrigue that had separated them, the chance encounter that had reunited them, and the conscious choices that had rebuilt their relationship on a stronger foundation than before. Later, as they danced beneath the stars, Riker held Nadia close, his voice low in her ear. I keep thinking about that rainy night, how close we came to missing this, to never knowing the truth. We might have passed each other in traffic and never known, Nadia agreed, the thought still chilling despite the happy reality they now inhabited. Or I might have successfully avoided you, continued believing the worst. What made you stop that night? At the gas station, when you could have driven away, called the police, refused to listen? Nadia considered the question, remembering the fear and anger that had coursed through her as she'd seen him approaching her car in the rain. "Something in your eyes," she said finally. "Not what I expected to see. Not smugness or entitlement or dismissal. Just pain. The same pain I'd been carrying. And you were brave enough to listen, despite everything. Or desperate enough to hope," she countered with a small smile. "Either way, it was the best decision I ever made." "Second best," Riker corrected, spinning her gently as the music swelled. "The best was deciding to keep our daughter, even when you thought you'd have to do it alone." The acknowledgement of her courage in those dark days, her refusal to surrender to pressure or convenience, touched Nadia deeply. For all the joy they had found together, she knew she would never regret the strength she had discovered in herself during their separation, the capacity to rebuild, to stand firm in her convictions, to create a life worthy of the child she'd chosen to bring into the world. As the evening progressed, they took turns dancing with Arya, who stayed awake far past her bedtime, stimulated by the music and lights and the endless attention from adoring guests. Her laughter, bright and uninhibited, seemed to encapsulate everything they had fought for, not just her existence, but the joy she brought, the love she inspired, the future she represented. 1 year after their wedding, Nadia stood in their lakeside home, watching as Arya took careful steps toward Riker, who waited with outstretched arms and an expression of pure devotion. At 20 months, their daughter was a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, combining Nadia's intelligence with Riker's determination in ways that both delighted and exhausted her parents. "She's going to be running clinical trials by the time she's 5, Riker joked as Arya finally reached him, collapsing into his embrace with a triumphant giggle. "Or negotiating corporate mergers," Nadia countered, resting a hand on her slightly rounded belly, where their second child, a son, according to the ultrasound, was making his presence known with enthusiastic kicks. "Either way, I think the world had better prepare itself." Riker's gaze softened as it moved from their daughter to the evidence of their growing family. "Are you feeling okay? No contractions, no dizziness?" "Just the usual second trimester energy surge," Nadia reassured him, touched by his concern even as she gently teased his protectiveness. "This pregnancy is completely different from the first. No stress, no hiding, no fear. And no premature labor," Riker added firmly, as if he could ensure it through sheer force of will. "From your mouth to this little one's ears," Nadia laughed, moving to join them on the floor where Arya was now examining a picture book with intense concentration. "Though I have to admit, I wouldn't mind skipping the last month. I'd forgotten how uncomfortable it gets." "Whatever you need," Riker promised, the same words he'd offered that night in the diner when they begun their reconciliation. "Always." The simple pledge still held the same power to move her, to remind her of how far they had come from that rainy night of confrontation and revelation. Their journey hadn't ended with marriage or even with Arya's birth. It continued to unfold each day in the choices they made, the priorities they established, the trust they reinforced through consistent action rather than mere words. Devoronovaxis Pharmaceuticals had thrived under their joint leadership, Riker as CEO, Nadia as research director, becoming known not just for its profitable innovations but for its ethical approach to drug development and patient care. The balance they had found in their personal lives extended to their professional collaboration, each bringing unique strengths to the partnership while respecting the other's domain expertise. "Mama, book," Arya demanded, breaking into Nadia's reflections with the imperious tone she'd definitely inherited from her father. "Read book now." "Yes, Your Highness," Nadia replied with exaggerated deference, settling beside her daughter as Riker rose to prepare dinner. "Which story would you like?" "The Rain one," Arya decided, pushing a well-worn picture book into Nadia's hands, a gift from Sophia, featuring a little girl who discovers unexpected treasures during a stormy day. As Nadia began reading, she caught Riker's gaze across the room, warm, appreciative, filled with the quiet joy of ordinary moments made extraordinary by the love that infused them. In his expression, she saw not just the passionate man who had become her husband or the dedicated father who adored their daughter, but the partner who had fought alongside her to create this life they now shared. Their story hadn't been easy or straightforward. It had been complicated by misunderstanding, threatened by manipulation, nearly destroyed by the very ambition that had initially brought them together. But through it all, they had found their way back to each other, not by chance or fate alone, but by the conscious decision to seek truth, to choose trust, to build something stronger than what had been broken. As the evening settled around them, Arya finally asleep, the lake gleaming silver under the rising moon, their home quiet except for the gentle sounds of Riker moving about the kitchen, Nadia felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. Not just for the happiness they had found, but for the challenges they had overcome, the growth those challenges had demanded, and the deeper connection that had emerged from their shared resilience. "What are you thinking about?" Riker asked, coming to sit beside her on the sofa, one hand automatically moving to rest on her pregnant belly. "Everything," she admitted with a smile. "How different life might have been if we'd made different choices. If I hadn't stopped at that gas station, if you hadn't followed me, if either of us had chosen anger over honesty. I've always believed that the most important decisions reveal our true character," Riker said thoughtfully. "Not the easy ones made in moments of clarity, but the difficult ones forced upon us in confusion or pain. Like deciding to keep Arya even when I thought I'd been betrayed," Nadia offered. "Or you choosing to search for explanations rather than simply accepting my disappearance." "Exactly." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining with the familiar comfort of long practice. "We are who we are not despite the challenges we've faced, but because of them. They've shaped us, individually and together." The baby kicked then, as if adding his opinion to the philosophical discussion, making both parents smile in anticipation of the new life that would soon join their family. "He's going to be just as opinionated as his sister," Nadia predicted, guiding Riker's hand to feel the movement. "With two scientists as parents?" "I'd be disappointed if he wasn't," Riker replied with a grin. "Though perhaps slightly less vocal about those opinions at 5 a.m. "Dream on," Nadia laughed, leaning into his embrace as the day's activities caught up with her. "He's a Devereaux Moreno. Volume control isn't in our genetic makeup." As they sat together in comfortable silence, connected by touch and shared memories and dreams for the future, Nadia reflected on the message embedded in their journey, that love at its most powerful isn't the effortless emotion of fairy tales, but the deliberate choice to see beyond hurt, to listen beyond assumption, to build beyond brokenness. Their story wasn't perfect or uncomplicated. It contained moments of profound pain alongside those of transcendent joy. But perhaps that was precisely what made it worth telling. The reality that true connection emerges not from the absence of struggle, but from the courage to face that struggle together, to learn from it, to grow through it towards something stronger and more enduring than what came before. In the end, what mattered wasn't the deception that had nearly destroyed them or even the truth that had ultimately saved them. What mattered was what they had chosen to build with that truth, a relationship founded on mutual respect rather than convenience, a family created through conscious choice rather than obligation, a future designed together rather than imposed by others' expectations. Have you ever discovered that what you thought was the end of your story was actually just the beginning of a better one? Has a moment of crisis ever led to unexpected growth or connection in your own life? Share your experience in the comments below, and subscribe for more stories that explore the complicated, messy, beautiful reality of human relationships. Because sometimes the most powerful love stories aren't those without conflict, but those that show us how to find our way through conflict towards something deeper and more enduring than we ever imagined possible.